Hello there, and welcome back to another Cloud with Chris weekly vlog. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you for joining me today. This is weekly vlog number 16, so that's 4 months of doing these weekly vlogs. Time is absolutely flying by. Hope you're all staying safe and well. It has been quite a busy week this week, so we'll just go ahead, jump straight into things here because we've got a fair few blog posts, a fair few Azure updates to go through, and then a few bits and pieces to update on from Cloud with Chris this week, and of course what's coming up over the next week. So without further ado, let's go ahead, jump straight over and take a look at what's going on in the world. So there we go. Okay, we're going to be covering the blog posts first off from the Azure perspective here. So the first one is to do with IoT Edge, and you'll see this one cropping up a few times actually through the updates that we talk about today. This one is a blog post all around unlocking really value with IoT Edge devices, or nested IoT Edge devices, I should say. So there's this capability that has recently come out with IoT Edge. Some of you who follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn may have seen that I've been posting about this already. But this idea of being able to nest IoT devices from an IoT Edge perspective. Why is that important? Think about those IoT devices where you want to have almost this air-gapped or network segregated kind of approach. This is where this kind of IoT Edge nested approach can really come in useful. So it's a really, really interesting update, actually. I want to try and get hands-on at some point and go and dig into this one a little bit more. Haven't had a chance yet, but that is the hope, at least sometime in the near future, to be able to do that. But an interesting update, so go ahead, take a look at that one. Next up then, we've got just an update here from the Microsoft Azure marketing team around some of the transformation from a GPU perspective, GPU technology conference, NVIDIA's conference there. And they talk about some of the announcements here. They've got a new high memory variants coming for their GPU supercomputing portfolio is what they mention here. And then also they mention a few other feature updates, PCIe Gen 4 based building blocks they have today, etc., etc. They also talk about raising the bar for XR streaming, and they also talk about announced today the NVIDIA Cloud XR platform will be available on Azure instances. So again, very interesting, the joins up approach there, partnerships that we're seeing here. So some GPU updates there, which are good to be aware of if you're running any kind of HPC workloads there as well. And I'm just going to adjust the lighting here. I think I hit a button as I was talking there. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, so next up then we have got another blog post all about IoT, Internet of Things, but this time talking about the ability or the blueprint to go ahead and solve this, what they call elusive zero-touch provisioning for IoT devices at scale. And really what they're talking about here is this concept of being able to use things like the device provisioning service, and then talking about some of the challenges that commonly crop up in this space as well. And I believe when I read into this before, it was to do with the PKI aspects there as well. So the key infrastructure that backs that, because typically for those IoT devices, you'll want to have each device having its own certificate representation so that you can lock those down in some way. And then there's this kind of hierarchy you can use of leaf nodes and intermediary certificates then as well. So again, that's actually quite a lot to think about when you're provisioning your IoT infrastructure, and they talk here about how you can almost set up a blueprint to go and provision that. So again, if you're in the IoT space, there's quite a few updates to track this week, so go ahead, keep an eye on that one as well. One that we've mentioned before, but again worth calling out, is this Azure Storage Day that is coming up on Thursday, April 29th. It's going to be Pacific time, so 9 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific time. And it's going to be a good event by the looks of it. It sounds like there's going to be a few different pieces raised in terms of announcements. I believe I heard somewhere, I think it was on one of the podcasts or one of the news updates. They were talking about trends, for example, they're seeing, talking about how to decide on certain solutions and certain options, for example. So if you're trying to understand Azure storage overall, it's a good event to go and put in your diary there. So again, that's an event coming up on Thursday the 29th. And then the last of the Azure blog posts here for this week is to do with empowering operators on their cloud migration journey. So think about the telephony kind of operators is what we're talking about there. And what they're talking about here is how Azure is going a step further and how they've been working. I think it was with Cambridge, actually, when I was reading this the other day, about using cellular towers and some of the cloud-based approaches there to go and run that operator kind of model there. So again, quite an interesting article actually, because I guess, when I think of cloud, I think more of those enterprise applications, any type of application. I don't think of mobile network operators and those kind of scenarios. So just a really fascinating use case actually, and an interesting one to go and read through. So if you're interested in the broader landscape of what's going on, this is just an interesting set of updates here to keep a watch on. Now we're going to be going through our rapid fire Azure updates round here. So I'm going to take just a quick sip of my tea before we do that, because there are quite a few to go ahead and update on. So let's go ahead then and jump in. Log Analytics Windows Agent for Winter 2021 is now generally available. General availability of Azure Blob Storage supporting objects up to 200 terabytes in size. Azure Maps weather services are now generally available. I did make a joke on Twitter and LinkedIn how I think there's a pun in there about cloud and weather services. I'll leave you to go and make the joke yourself. Azure IoT Edge 1.2.0 release is now GA, and there were some interesting updates there. Let's just quickly dig into that one. So Edge Identity Service, integration with on-prem PKI infrastructure, storing certain HSMs, ability to configure a nested hierarchy, which we've already talked about here, and the generic MQTT broker in public preview. So quite some interesting updates in the IoT space there this week. General availability, Lustra HSM tools now available to import from or export to Azure Storage. General availability, Azure IoT Central, new and updated features March 2021. A very interesting one that I'm pleased to see coming up, or rather released I should say now, is Azure API management support for availability zones is now GA. Excellent update. GA of encryption at host support in AKS. I've already talked about that with a customer this week, so that one has been well received already. Public preview of Azure Machine Learning VS Code integration. MSIX app attach in Azure Portal is now generally available. And let's go to page 1. And next up we have Azure Database for PostgreSQL, Hyperscale Citus, maintenance schedules in public preview. I almost said hyperspace, revealing my Star Wars background there and my fandom, in case you didn't notice with the lightsabers behind me. Azure Database for PostgreSQL, Hyperscale Citus Basic in public preview. Azure Database for PostgreSQL, Hyperscale Citus same region reader replicas in public preview. Excuse me. Azure SQL generally availability updates for April 14th, 2021. And they seem to be primarily related to Azure SQL Managed Instance from I read these the other day. So service-aided subnet configuration for Azure SQL Managed Instance now makes use of service tags for user-defined routes. So interesting update there for anyone on more of an infrastructure-based networking kind of scenario there. Azure IoT Edge nesting capabilities are now GA. We've talked about those a couple of times already. Public preview of SAP NetWeaver North Europe and new updates in cluster monitoring. Public preview of Microsoft build of OpenJDK. I thought that one was a particularly interesting update there. Reduce data flow execution time with cluster reuse public preview in Azure Data Factory. That one was just an interesting one about, I think it was using Spark or similar to optimize the running of executions there. So if you use Data Factory, maybe worth having a glance at that. Public preview of Cognitive Services Anomaly Detector now supports multivariate anomaly detection. Public preview of Functions upgrade in Azure Monitor Log Analytics. So just to be clear, nothing to do with Azure Functions, that one. We're talking like the typical function programming model and being able to use functions as a programming method in Azure Monitor Log Analytics. So some upgrades there in discoverability and using those in Azure Log Analytics there. GA of new Azure policy built-in definitions for data encryption in Azure Monitor. General availability log analytics workspace name uniqueness is now per resource group. So now you are not limited to having a globally unique log analytics workspace name at a subscription level. That is now done on a per resource group basis. Cognitive Services new computer vision API 3.2 is now generally available. Public preview support for multiple currencies on retail rates APIs for all Azure products and services. So you're not limited to just USD anymore. You can go ahead and have GBP or other potential currencies there as well. Apache Spark 3.0 is now available for public preview in HT Insight 4. Azure Automation support for system-assigned managed identities is now in public preview. General availability of event source start options in Azure Time Series Insights Gen 2. User data through Azure Instance Metadata Service is now generally available. That is interesting. I hadn't quite caught that one the other day. I'll need to go back and take a look at that. General availability of Azure Sphere version 21.04, expected on April 29th, 2021. So that's coming in the next couple of weeks or so by the sounds of it. And then finally, Open Source API Portal is now generally available. This one's kind of interesting, and let's see here. So the API portal lets you create and publish a customized site with API documentation for free and without writing code. So leveraging a GitHub-based workflow, etc., there. And API portal relies on the same technology as the API management developer portal. So this is kind of interesting. I had heard that this one was actually being spun out as its own separate project there. So it sounds like that has now actually been published and released. So you don't have to go ahead and use API management if you want to go and have this kind of developer portal experience. Obviously, there's a much better and tighter experience if you use API management and you want to go ahead and integrate it there. But if you use other API management kind of tooling, another platform, for example, it sounds like this is now an API portal that you could go and publish nice and easily for your external developers, your internal developers and the like. So interesting release there, and that is now generally available. So let's jump across now to the Azure DevOps blog. So first up, a couple of updates relating to Azure DevOps Server. So Azure DevOps Server 2020.1 RC2 is now available. April patches for Azure DevOps Server and Team Foundation Server are now available, and I am going to click on that because when I looked at that the other day, it goes all the way back to TFS 2017. So 2017, 2018, 2018, and Azure DevOps Server 2019, 2020, and it does call out the various patch versions there, so I'd encourage you to read that. It's, as I say, it patches some vulnerabilities by the sounds of it, so you'll want to go ahead and take a look at that patch if you're running any of those self-hosted instances there. Next up, there was a post then, another Azure Fun Bites episode, this time with Henk Bolman, talking all about Azure machine learning. So if you're not used to machine learning as a concept, or you are, but you're interested in how Azure machine learning maybe can help you and want a bit of an introduction, that might be an episode to go and watch there. DevOps Fireside Chat, March 2021 review, a chat with Damien Brady and Abel Wang, and they talk about agile development and some of the transformations that are happening there, tools, processes, cultural changes, and the like. We talked previously about the personal access token lifecycle API, so being able to go ahead and use APIs effectively to provision and manage the life cycles of those personal access tokens. So that is now publicly available by the sounds of it. They've had overwhelming amounts of interest. So yes, many private preview participants have been able to leverage this, set up automated pipelines for rotating soon to be expired PAT tokens. and they are announcing that is now available to the general audience there. So great update. Go ahead, take a look at that if you want to programmatically manage your personal access tokens from within Azure DevOps. And then finally, a few additional updates this week from the community. First two around Bicep, the first one using Azure DevOps, the second one about using GitHub Actions. Then there was one about dealing with a specific error when using submodules in Azure pipelines. Another on converting classic UI Azure pipelines into YAML pipelines. And then one about setting up a CI/CD pipeline using Azure DevOps. And this is about AKS, I believe, in particular. So a good variety there of updates. And finally, let's take a look at GitHub here. From a GitHub perspective, there is a really great blog post all about implementing least privileges for secrets in GitHub Actions. So talking about how secrets work from an availability perspective, talking about how you can limit the use of secrets. So by using the environment concept within GitHub Actions, that is something I'm a big advocate about, of scoping your secrets down on an environment by environment basis, because then if you think about principle of least privilege outside of your automation pipelines and your normal users, you always go ahead and think about restricting. But I know that some just think, oh, okay, it's automation, I can just go ahead and give it whatever access I need. I would encourage you to go ahead and give principle of least privilege and carry on operating by that model, because if somehow a token did get compromised or a service principal or whatnot, then again, you're limiting that blast radius, something we've talked about time and time again on the show and on the channel here. So they talk about environments, they talk about using the code owners files to restrict who can actually, or rather who must go ahead and review those changes there, and creating branch protection rules as well. And then they also talk about integrating with secret stores there as well, and rotating secrets. So good set of guidance there, so go ahead, and I'd encourage you to go ahead, take a look at that. And then one, again, that went under my radar, I didn't quite catch this one yet, but working with GitHub Actions from the Azure, sorry, not from the Azure, from the GitHub CLI. So this is what I do want to go ahead and take a look at, actually, because what they do is they show how the GitHub CLI can go ahead and run PR checks, how it can go and help you see the latest changes from an actions perspective that have gone in there, how you can go ahead and watch some of those ones that are ongoing, for example. So really interesting to see that the GitHub CLI is available and helping with that. It does make me wonder whether at some point in the GitHub mobile app we will see the GitHub CLI, just like you have in the Azure mobile app, you can access Azure Cloud Shell. I wonder if we'll get a similar experience, with GitHub mobile app and the GitHub CLI. That would be kind of interesting there, being able to do your GitHub command line pieces on the go there. So if not, maybe that's something I need to float out there on Twitter as well on that one. So that is it in terms of the broader updates of what is going on. In terms of Cloud with Chris updates, going to keep it fairly brief this week. So this week, first off, started off with last week's weekly vlog, number 15, where we did the roundups as usual, just like in this session. So if you missed that, please go back and check that one out. And then there were a few things going on last week. So last week was the first cadence where I decided to go for 2 blogs a week. I am going to try and maintain that as a rhythm going forward. We'll see how we get on. No promises. I might need to switch back to 1 a week, but it's something I'm experimenting with. So on Monday, I posted about some tips from my perspective on getting started with blogging, building upon the recent live stream with Shannon Quinn, Jamie Maguire, John Lunn and Sarah Lean and myself. Had a great time, and again I linked to that stream in the article there as well, so go ahead and check that one out. Really pleased to see that there's a few people in the community, for example Carl Cook, who has been revamping his blog, also Christopher as well, who I've spoken with, who's attended a few of the local user groups and Azure groups as well, I know is putting his own blog together. So I'm really pleased to see that there are a few folks in the community starting to go ahead and write their own blogs. And like we said, do it for yourself, do it for your own reasons, and don't put any pressure on yourself. If you think you're going to write one post a week, write one post a week. If it's one post every couple of weeks or one post a month, do that. You're doing it for your own reasons, and ultimately make it work for you. Next up then, I did another blog post on Wednesday. And this one was actually building upon a recommendation, or not really a recommendation, but a call out from Scott Hanselman in the recent talk that he did at a user group I was also presenting at the same time. And he talked about securityheaders.com, how he, when he's building his sites, he goes and makes sure that his sites conform to that. So it was something that I did for cloudwithchris.com. And if I just switch across actually to the blog post, I talk about how initially I was rated an F. Yes, F for fail. I was quite surprised by that, given I enforce HTTPS. So I was wondering what other things I need to go and do, and actually it was a great experience to go through that and delve into some of the headers that I should set. So I talk about how I actually use Azure CDN and the global, not the global, but the CDN rules engine to go and enforce those. So I've now upped my site to being an A, and the only reason it's an A and not an A plus is because one of the settings that I need to set I can't set through Azure CDN because of a character limit on the value for that particular header. It's 128 characters, I believe. So I set that in the HTML header instead, and what I do then is I've used other services like Mozilla Observatory, and I can tell in there, for example, I'm getting very good ratings on the site now. So that was something which was just an interesting exercise to go through, and I think these types of things to some degree may help out with SEO, but I like I said in the article, I want to make sure that my users are safely browsing my website and safely using my website, so that's why I want to go and implement that. So that was an interesting exercise to go through. So then next up, I didn't actually do any episodes last week because I released a couple of talks. So I did those live. I did one on Friday, one on Saturday. And they were both part of Global Azure 2021, so it was a great experience. Thank you, folks, for having me on that. Was really pleased to be part of that, and I think the organising team did a brilliant job of coordinating a global conference, a virtual conference, of course, but a global conference in the times that we're in. So well done, and kudos to you for that. So I did 2 sessions, and for those of you that have seen me speak at local user groups, you may have seen some slight variation of these. One is about using Hugo, Azure Storage, Azure CDN for a cheap and performant site on Azure. The other is about using GitHub Actions to help in building and deploying a static website and more to Azure. So both of those are on YouTube. And again, I will continue to go and deliver those to local user groups because it's content which seems to really be resonating with people. It's helping a few people start on their blogging journey, and I'm glad that I can play a small part in that. So again, if you haven't seen that one, it is online, or I would love to have people come and watch it live at local user groups, but I'm going to leave it there. I was thinking about taking it down because, I want people to come and see it live, but I appreciate not everyone can always go to those user groups and meetup groups, so I want it to be accessible, so I am going to leave it online there. So the benefit of coming along is you get to ask me questions, and I need to do a little Mystic Meg kind of thing at the beginning of those sessions, because there are certain questions that come up like clockwork every single time I run that particular set of sessions. So I need to go and make sure that I write those on a piece of paper or something before the session. So maybe I'll do that for the next one that I do. Okay, so then what is coming up this week? We are, of course, recording weekly vlog number 16 here, so 4 months has flown by, so thank you for tuning into these. It's really appreciated. Then on Thursday, I'm going to have a good friend and someone, as I mentioned, who has started on I guess, changing their blog and looking at getting a regular rhythm going with that. So Carl Cook will be joining me in a live stream on Thursday, and rather than me doing the driving, Carl's going to be taking the microphone, and we're going to be talking about the Cloud with Chris architecture, how I use the kind of GitHub actions and GitHub setup overall, why I've made some of the choices that I've made, because I know that's something that is going to be valuable to him on his journey, because he's looking at doing something similar, and I figured actually it's a story I want to tell, links back to the previous 2 talks that I mentioned. So why not let's have it open rather than a closed discussion. So that's what we're going to do there on Thursday. Now on Friday we've got a brilliant session coming up, a discussion on Azure Spring Cloud. You will know when you watch that episode because it's already pre-recorded and ready to go. That episode, you will see that I am not shy about the fact that I have not done any Java in quite some years. Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, Spring Framework are all alien concepts to me, so I was very much in a learning mode in that one and just kind of trying to understand from Gitta some of her experiences with it. And really great episode. I think Gitta did an incredible job in that session, so that is one not to miss. If you've heard about these things like Spring Boot, Spring Framework, Spring Cloud, and you think they're like these little things that are in your bed, these little springs, not quite that, go ahead, check out that session on Friday, because it is going to be, or it is rather, I should say, a great episode, and you are in for a treat with that one. And then this week as well, a couple of blog posts coming out. I'll be releasing one tomorrow on Microsoft Learn and using Microsoft Learn to get started with Azure. The reason I'm doing that is the more I do some of these local meetup groups and user groups, I'm mentioning some of the tools and some of the platforms that are out there for people to learn from. And I'm realizing that still not everyone knows about Microsoft Learn, and it's been around for about 3 years or so now, actually. But it is this brilliant resource that continues to be invested in, with a number of pieces of content, modules, learning paths, etc. that are on it. You've got Learn TV, you've now got certificate renewals on there as well, and a lot of people are barely even scratching the surface with it. So I've put a blog post together, which will be coming out tomorrow, to talk all about that, how you can get started with Learn if you haven't already. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a blog post all about role-based access control from Azure, but really focusing on the data plane side of things. So we'll do a bit of an introduction or an interlude, I suppose, on the role-based access control in general from an Azure perspective, but really honing in and focusing in on some of the data plane components there. So think about things like Key Vault, Cosmos DB, Azure Storage, where you've recently seen the investment in bringing RBAC into those services. So I'm going to be delving into some of those and just shining a bit of a light on those, because again, it's not necessarily that it's difficult to understand. Sometimes people just don't realize these technologies are there and these approaches are there and possible. So it's going to be a blog post really about raising awareness and just showcasing that you can go and do these things. So that's going to be coming out on Wednesday. And I think that is about it. I might see if I can fit a Cloud Drops episode in this week, but yes, things are very busy, so I might not be able to get that squeezed in, but we'll see what we can do there. In terms of talks coming up, I think that there is the Leeds Azure Meetup group on Wednesday. So that is coming up on Wednesday. Then on next week, then we've got a few more things coming up. The DevOps Knots Glasgow Azure user group then on Wednesday, April the 28th as well. And I also have a couple of things coming up in May. There's a session with devreel.io that I need to add to the site, and that is going to be all about Azure fundamentals effectively. So going to be changing things up. Rather than talking about my normal developer, DevOps, cloud architecture pieces, I'm going to be taking it back to the foundations, talking about what is cloud, some of the different cloud concepts and principles like IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and effectively what Azure is overall. So if you're at the beginning of your journey, that will be a good session to go and tune into and watch as well. So I think, without further ado, that is it. Apart from, no, there is something happening on Tuesday. I mentioned I thought Tuesday was free. I'm completely wrong. It's a very busy week. On Tuesday, Azure Thames Valley is on, and we have none other than Sarah Lean joining us, talking all about hybrid Azure management. So in for a treat in that session. I've been looking forward to having Sarah come along to the group to come and speak about about hybrid Azure. I know that's a topic she's very passionate about. So looking forward to having her come along and join us. It's just time is slipping away at the moment and disappearing. I forgot that we're now already coming towards the tail end of April. So that is going to be this week, of course. So come along for that one as well. Going to be a great session there. And now that is it, I believe. Yes, we've got Carl on Thursday, which we talked about, and Gitter on Friday as well. So let's jump back and start wrapping things up here. So there we go. I said that was going to be a quick roundup from Cloud with Chris. Ended up being a little longer, and this was one of my longest vlogs, I think, actually. So don't know how that happened, but there we go. So without further ado, we're going to wrap things up. You know what to do. If you've liked this episode, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe on the channel. 90% of you who watch are not subscribed, and that's okay. But if you come back, if you keep coming back and you find yourself searching Cloud with Chris in YouTube or on Google or wherever you decide to search, in Bing, for example, if you keep coming back, I would love you to subscribe and show your support and hit the notification bell so you know as soon as there is new content. And I am not just on you can see where I was going there. I'm not just on YouTube. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and cloudwithchris.com, where you can, of course, read the transcript in real time as you go ahead and listen to the episode as well. So with that, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you once again for your support today. And until next time, bye for now.